This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal, tax, investment, financial, or other advice. It is not intended to cause or induce breach of an existing agency agreement.
Hello? 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 This is the Vancouver
Commercial
Real Estate Podcast.
And welcome back to the Vancouver Commercial Real Estate Podcast. Melissa, we are back.
We're back. 2025.
It's 2025. We're back.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. We're about 2 weeks late. Time this program goes out, we'll be 3 weeks late, but we are back.
We're here.
We're here. We're excited. We're energetic. We're trying to do our resolutions as best we can for the next 2 weeks before we give up on them.
You're fueled by cheese from the last month.
I'm fueled by cheese. You're going to have to listen to the whole episode to find out what cheese we're talking about. It's truffle cheese. It's amazing.
You just gave it up.
I gave it a snippet.
Okay.
I don't even know what brand of cheese it was. We need to go to Save On Foods after and find this cheese for our listeners. It is that good. But the listeners will find out more about this. It's 2025. It's going to be an exciting year.
I think so. It'll be an interesting year.
It's going to be an interesting year. As we talk about on the program here, before we do that, let's talk about who we have on the program. Mm-hmm. We have Santanna Portman joining us from our William Wright Central Island office to kick off the year. Why did we bring her on to start the year? We picked Nanaimo as we thought might be our best investment market for next year. The Western Investor also picked Nanaimo as one of their top markets. We wanted to kind of continue on with that trend. We wanted to bring in an expert from that area to unpack why it's such a great opportunity in that market there. So we have Santanna Portman from our Central Island office on to talk about today.
She's got her boots on the ground there.
She's got her boots on the ground. She's got real-time information. Yep. She's got some real examples of what's happening there. So our listeners are going to love that. As we do talk on the program, and you said a little bit of unsettlement here, we got some political unsettling challenges ahead of us here with Mr. Trudeau stepping down, or as of recently, since we haven't been on program since that happened. That's a program in itself.
Yeah,
we got Mr. Trump who's ready to step in. Ooh. Right now. We've got Canada that's potentially the 51st state. He's talking about. We've got tariffs that are threatened back and forth between the countries right now. We most likely end up at the polls for a federal election, probably in springtime. It sounds like probably April, May. We might have a new prime minister in shortly after that, which is going to be desperately needed because I think Mr. Trump's going to just step on our throats as Canadians because we don't really have a prime minister right now that has probably the right interest in what's happening. It's going to be a very interesting next 3 to 6 months to see what happens.
Yeah.
And, there's been a lot of talk about these tariffs. Again, Trump obviously says a lot of stuff. And I'm probably speaking out loud here. I'm sure what happened was he was probably in the middle of some rally and just threw out, we're going to throw tariffs on Canada. And then someone in the media picked it up and yeah, it's a great idea. And then a whole bunch of buzz started. And now he's like, oh, I have to actually do this now.
Yeah. He likes to get people going. And it got people going.
Oh, yeah, absolutely it did. So now he's kind of he was all Mexico. He's like, let's go kick the pants off the guys up north of the 49th parallel here. So it's going to be very interesting to see how things unfold.
Buckle up.
It's obviously going to have a lot of impact on the real estate market because our economy obviously is tied very close to our real estate market, both the residential and commercial, and also not really knowing clarity from a federal level of what's happening because we're going to go to the polls earlier. As I talked about just briefly on the program today, I think it's going to be really tough for Canadians to get behind a new Liberal leader. So I think it's going to be hard to sort of regain the votes there, at least for this election. NDP obviously hasn't had the same track record from a federal level as maybe they had here in BC as of late. I think it's going to be very hard to not get very hard to knock off the Conservative Party right now. Obviously, we don't know, but it's trending in that way. Poilievre have come out, and this will obviously affect the real estate market for sure. He's come out saying that they're going to potentially reverse the proposed capital gains increase that the federal government proposed in their budget for 2024, which then obviously when Justin Trudeau is stepping down, usually his budget table, that kind of goes with him. But the CRA came out and said, hey, don't worry, we're going to tax you as if the new inclusion rate is in effect, which it They said it is, but it hasn't been voted in yet. So it's going to be a very interesting year for Canadians, a very interesting year for Americans. Because at the end of the day, tariffs don't really help anybody. And I get the purpose of them, but if I'm an American and I'm buying lumber, for argument's sake, 25% less than what the home builders are buying for down here, well, if that lumber cost goes up 25%, that cost is going to get passed on to me as the end consumer.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I don't know if you go to the grocery store, it's $40 for bananas. We cannot use, nor do we need any more inflationary problems with our cost of living. So the tariffs on both sides of the border is just going to drive up inflationary costs for both countries, which hopefully, if it does go down that road, that they come to a meeting of the minds, which Trump will spin and say a victory for the Americans, which is fine. If that's what it takes, that's what it takes. But they'll come to a meeting of the minds and hopefully we'll realize that the tariffs for neither country at these extreme levels is going to benefit anybody.
Imagine the price of that truffle cheese.
Could you imagine truffle cheese if it had a 25 tariff? It would be like $40.
Yeah.
Same price as bananas. So let's get, without further ado, we got lots to unpack and talk about. Let's get to our episode today. Santanna Portman, senior commercial broker with William Wright Commercial, Central Island, unpacking Nanaimo and why we feel it could be your best investment market for 2025.
All right, let's hear it.
Enjoy. This podcast is presented by Impact Commercial.
Impact Commercial, John, Alan, the team over there are fantastic. They've all been on the show.
They have, yeah.
Friends of the show.
Great guys.
Wealth of experience. They can help with all your commercial financing needs.
Whether it's owner-occupiers, land development funds, commercial investments, or multifamily, these guys got you covered.
And they recently obtained their CMHC correspondent lender status.
So for all your commercial lending needs, visit them at impactcommercial.ca.
That's impactcommercial.ca.
We're here today with Santanna Portman, senior commercial broker at William Wright Commercial's Central Island office. Santanna, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And why we wanted to have you on today is because we picked Nanaimo as the best market, we think, in BC. The Western Investor also picked Nanaimo as one of their top markets. We're very bullish on the island. But before we get to that, can you tell us maybe a little bit more about yourself and how you got into commercial real estate?
Yeah, so I've been in commercial real estate for about 13 years now. I started in Saskatchewan and then made my way to BC through a different investment. And then didn't want to leave BC because I'm from Saskatchewan. So stayed here, got my license for the province in BC. And then I got involved in a development just outside of Parksville, full of other ventures. Yeah, now I'm happy to be on the island and kind of go from there.
Well, we're thrilled to have you part of the team there in the Central Island. And we're very fortunate that we met you years ago and you've been a huge asset. And as I said here at the top of the program is we do our top 5 markets every year. Rod McKay from our Vancouver office joins us and goes through kind of what we think our top 5 markets will be for 2025. And Nanaimo's either been the top or at the top of our list for a couple years now. And I know when we had Peter on from the Western Investor to talk about kind of like the markets that they thought would be some of the top markets to watch. And they had 1 or 2 from each province. And Nanaimo, again, was on their list as one of the top markets. And as I said before, we did our top 5 list. One reason why we like it so much is there's a lot of demand from the outside now looking to get into that market. And there's still a lot of good opportunities in that market. One of the challenges with some secondary markets and tertiary markets over the years is you would have great assets, but they were very slow to like lease up. There wasn't a lot of demand from the incoming other communities or tenant pool. Now it feels like that has shifted quite a bit. And we've obviously been very bullish on Nanaimo. We wanted to bring you on today to unpack why this is such a tremendous market that people need to know about. So your thoughts off the top, and then we'll take it from there. Why Nanaimo? Why is Nanaimo such an amazing market right now?
Well, I think Nanaimo and Parksville and the areas kind of around there have an advantage of just generational properties that are slowly being traded. It's an advantage and a disadvantage. I think that properties are slowly getting traded due to, just families going to other places and not being so much interested. but still being super affordable for the people who are used to investing in, the Vancouver market.
Yeah.
I would say too that now with kind of everything that's going on in the US and, in Canada, there's a lot of US interest in the market and other provinces. The US, always has like a little coupon to use when they come and invest in Canada.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our dollar.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's like a lot of undercover gems that are just sitting and waiting for investors with, experience and the ability to make those gems a little bit shinier.
Well, one thing I think me and you have talked about this lots is like from a tenant standpoint, we're talking about local tenants, national, provincial, international tenants. If you go back maybe 5+ years ago, Nanaimo maybe wasn't really part of the conversation of some of these tenants looking to expand and get into these markets. Now you look at these markets, and markets like Kamloops and Nanaimo are some of the top markets that these tenants want to get into. And I know recently we talked about you were fortunate to be part of a mandate about a QSR company looking to expand throughout the island. And these conversations from a lot of these larger tenants weren't there. Why is Nanaimo now part of this conversation now that maybe it wasn't part of it years ago?
Well, I met with a executive director of Parksville downtown, and he kind of had the same question. It was, why are people coming into Nanaimo? Well, how do we get them into Parksville? What's going on? What makes different downtowns and markets attractive? And the other thing that really stuck out was they often get franchisees or franchisors calling them and asking them for data on the areas. When you do a quick Google search or you do a map search of Nanaimo and Parksville, it's a whole false illusion of what it really is. Like Parksville is about 13,000 people, but we have a lot of surrounding areas. We have a lot of people coming in and investing. We have a lot of people, not just in the tourist season, but making this their home.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where we now are getting that population and that exposure, especially during COVID. A lot of people came to the island and spent COVID here.
Yeah.
So it put the Central Island a little bit more on track, which means, there's need for services. And when we look at the QSRs that are coming in, it's also good for local businesses. Another thing that she mentioned to me, I have a pub and a cafe in Parksville, just outside. And she said, how do we get you guys down here? And it was, I want to be where the franchises are. I want to be where brands are recognized. So, I think Parksville and Nanaimo is doing a really good job, just, community-wise, of actually understanding why it's important to bring these brands in and to support them, because it helps everyone.
Yeah. No, I think when you look at, Nanaimo's council, they've been forward-thinking. They've had record-setting building permits issued year over year over year. You have a above average population growth. You're getting migration up island. You're getting migration into the island from the lower mainland and other parts of BC and probably Alberta as well, that you've got so much more attention now on this market. And it's such a beautiful place to live. Affordability is still there, as much as it may feel less affordable now for people who've grown up there. And I think one of the biggest opportunities is a lot of people growing up in maybe the Central Island area, they buy what they know, they live in their communities. They may not completely understand the outside demand that's now coming in. And if you look at Nanaimo as an example, they adopted a new OCP that allows for towers in like the downtown core. And there's sort of 3 phases of density now. And they've really looked to add some density in some really good areas, which are needed. Because I think when you look at it from an affordability standpoint, a livability standpoint, these markets are going to continue to thrive well into the future. And I think when you look at Parksville, a lot of people always associated Parksville with seniors and beaches and resorts you went when you were a kid. But if you drive into Parksville, and you can speak to this better than I can, there's a lot of development going on everywhere. And there's a lot of developers that have acquired a lot of large pieces of land yet to be developed. So when they start looking in there, they start acquiring years in advance that if you build it, they will come mentality probably exists a little bit right now still, but the lease up and the absorption of new product in these markets is really good. And I remember one time when we had the mayor of Parksville on the program, he said one of the challenges with Parksville is so many of these houses, to your point, were generational. They hadn't turned over. And with the cost of these houses now, some of the families are keeping them within the families when unfortunately the parents are no longer here and they're becoming summer houses or whatever they may be. I'm pretty sure the NDP government will kind of wean that out with more spec taxes and all the stuff they're going to throw at them to make it less affordable and less appealing for people to have two houses if you don't rent them out. But that's why so many things haven't turned over. And I know Parksville, as an example, was, in my opinion, was doing a pretty good job trying to attract a younger generation to Parksville. And when you look at the downtown core, with some of the condos and the rental buildings and the townhouses, they're all getting built. They're appealing, I think, to a different person now than maybe they would appeal to 10 years ago. And that goes the same thing for Nanaimo. A lot of these buildings that are getting built and stuff like that, it's the next generation they're really appealing to. That's going to continue to drive up demand for commercial real estate, because as people come into the communities, they need to go for coffee somewhere and go for eat and get their teeth cleaned somewhere, and they have to go work somewhere. So that's where commercial real estate really drives up. And then to add further pressure to it, when you look at the replacement cost value of a lot of these buildings now, is they far exceed the price to acquire the building currently. So that's going to make it harder and harder for developers in the future to kind of construct similar type assets than what we're currently there. Maybe it's a small office building in downtown Nanaimo as an example, or Parksville, that you're going to put additional pressure on the current leases and lease rates of these buildings, because the vacancy, all things considered, should tighten as more people come in, more demand, and less product gets delivered over time, that these become great short, medium, and probably long-term investments that may be very hard to find and replicate in the Lower Mainland, as an example of what you may be able to find in that Central Island market right now.
Yeah, I think too, the younger generation now has the ability to kind of stay closer to home. I mean, we have Nanaimo's got really good different education options. I have some employees myself that originally told me that, hey, next semester I'm going to Victoria or I'm going to Vancouver, and I can't work. Well, they soon switched their mindset, and they actually ended up transferring to Nanaimo, because there's the ability to work here. There's ability to live within reason and not actually enjoy life. So people are staying and they want to stay. So I think all these developments just give the opportunity to not just bring people in from the outside, but to actually sustain a new generation of people who are from the island.
And I think one thing that's a good point to mention too, when you look at the development on the multifamily side that's happening in Nanaimo primarily, also in Parksville, but Nanaimo and in the north end of Nanaimo, the absorption rate of these units is absorbing at a very good pace. And also the prices that these things are renting for now are also probably staggering for someone who maybe not understand or know how much they're renting for. That just, again, continues to create good attraction for investors looking into that market when you have a low vacancy rate, a high absorption rate of new product coming on, because then you can draw the conclusion it's not pent-up demand, but it's ongoing demand, that it's going to be a good asset for years to come. And I think sometimes in these smaller communities, knowing where to invest is really important, because if the city center were to shift or the attractions go to the other end of town, that's also going to affect lease rates, both office, industrial, retail, and multifamily rates in markets. So getting into a market like Nanaimo, and we'll just say like the north end of Nanaimo, is probably a really, really attractive investment opportunity for a lot of people. And when you look at the REITs and the institutions that have continued to buy these markets up, they're buying them up for a reason. They're not taking a gamble. Like, the data is pointing towards this. Moving forward with Nanaimo, and obviously lots of stuff happening there, what does the next couple of years look like for Nanaimo? Are we going to see continued growth? Do you run into a cap compression issue where cap rates lower, pushing prices higher? Do lease rates continue to tick up? Because that's one thing that makes it very attractive, is you can find really, really below market rents in a lot of these key corridors over there that now are renting for much higher. What's the next couple of years look like, say, for the Central Island?
Well, I definitely think that there's a bigger look at the downtown of Nanaimo. So right now they're going through a lot of different upgrades downtown, and some are not favorable to business owners at the moment, but obviously they got to go through the steps of providing appropriate services down there. We've got that one commercial that is kind of changing the narrative of downtown, making it a little bit more of a classier venue with a lot of interest again from corporate franchises. And that's just something that is going to kind of change everything. The businesses down there, there's some that have been down there for a really long time, and there's some that are new and they're new concepts, and that obviously will affect the lease rate. Once you have different players down there, you'll get a more favorable lease rate as a landlord for sure. But I think it's really something where it's just obvious that Nanaimo is going to grow. I mean, if you go downtown Nanaimo right now, you have access to ferries. You have, it's beautiful down there. It's, one of those places that it's not just going to stay stagnant.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the North End too, everyone wants to be in the North End. Retail is very scarce there. So more development over there is obviously going to be favorable. The South End of Nanaimo, it's kind of like the downtown. It's getting there, but yeah, Nanaimo's only got one place to go, and that's up.
Now, you talk a little bit there about the scarcity of retail in some of these keynotes. Is that an asset class that for that market is probably a more desirable asset class than, say, office or industrial right now?
I think retail is probably one of the best to look at right now, just like anywhere on the island. And again, when I was chatting with the people from Parksville, there's just also not a lot of options. There's just not buildings, and there's not appropriate buildings.
Yeah.
So when you have, your multifamily, and they have to fulfill the mandate of having first floor commercial for zoning purposes. That's all fine and dandy, but sometimes that first floor commercial is very limited to what you can put in there. So there's still not a lot of options for people. And I think the North End and Nanaimo is kind of the most popular and quote unquote safest for retailers, because you have such a high density of retail over there. But yeah, I think it's just a matter of also landlords being willing to do improvements for the tenants, being willing to see the upside of putting more into their investments rather than staying stagnant.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of landlords right now, like I said, about the generational properties that don't even understand the value of what they have.
Yeah, good point.
And both Parksville and Nanaimo, any city person that I talk to there has said, hey, how do we get to landlords and how do we get them to, improve their building? Well, you can't, right?
Yeah.
You can encourage it, but these lease rates and the people, the quality of tenants that are coming in with corporate covenants definitely should be motivating.
Totally. And that I think speaks to your point right there. That is one of the biggest attractions from an investment side. It's just how many of these larger corporations now have an interest in Nanaimo that wasn't there, which puts continued pressure. And I think to speak to the absorption just on the retail side of it, some buildings that you've done leasing for, I'm thinking of a couple on North Island Highway and then one on Metro just recently, where you had buildings that were completely either empty and you've successfully filled the full building, multi-unit buildings in a extremely fast time period, multiple offers, or to have some key retail locations where you've generated multiple offers out of the gate and achieved rates that were probably far higher than the previous tenants. That I think speaks a lot to kind of just the retail setting that market currently has, that creates the opportunity for investor to participate in if you can find the right asset, where these multiple offer situations probably didn't exist 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about that too is a lot of the interest was from local tenants, and they're now more aware of the value of being in certain areas. So they're not shy to pay that, $28, $30 rate, because they know that they'll have the traffic, they'll have the people come through their store, and they'll be able to sustain it. So, I think even a few years ago saying, hey man, you got to pay $30 a foot, they would, maybe not tell me nice things back.
Yeah. And now you're getting multiple offers from local tenants, but also national tenants that want these spaces that are very coveted that before didn't have the same attraction.
Yeah. So it's a different world, I think. And I think it's just going to get better. I think this year too, we've already seen such an uptick in interest on really all asset classes. I think, office is one of those ones where it's still recovering, but it is recovering. But yeah, I don't see anything. I think this is the year where things start to stabilize, developers start coming out of the woodwork, and it becomes more affordable to actually start developing. I know a lot of multifamily groups that kind of held tight for the last couple of years, but they're back hunting for land. So that's a good sign.
Well, that speaks volumes when you get the larger developers out there and they're looking for product, kind of move product. That speaks volumes. I know one thing too, before we kind of let you go. I know you're super busy and we wanted to kind of tap into your mind on that Central Island market. Over a decade in commercial real estate, what is your thoughts on 2025 as a whole? Maybe not so isolated just on the Central Island market, but just the real estate market as a whole, now that we've kind of feel like rates are going to kind of continue to slow down or come down a little bit this year. Obviously, we're currently dealing with some political unrest right now with Mr. Trudeau kind of stepping down, Mr. Trump ready to step in. We're in a very pivotal moment here. There's a lot of threat of tariffs going back and forth between the countries. What is 2025, in your opinion, unfold? How does it unfold for commercial real estate?
Well, it's really kind of hard to say just because of what's going on with the whole world right now. I've had a couple of emails from developers regarding the vacant land tax that was proposed. There's things that I think are still kind of unknown, but as far as what I can see right now is there's a lot more interest, and there's also interesting the types of interest we're getting from other provinces.
Yeah, good point.
And Alberta, I think Alberta, no matter what, always kind of affects BC and what's going on there. And there's a lot of guys over here that are from that area that, if Alberta's in a good position, they have money to spend in BC and they're happy to do it. So I think it's going in a positive direction. Fingers crossed. But
there's so many people have been anticipating 2025 from the commercial real estate world, whether it be tenants looking to go or developers looking to finally acquire and projects to get off the ground and go ahead. All of that stuff, I think, has been people have looked at. I think obviously Trump's comments on tariffs and Justin Trudeau stepping down has obviously thrown a little bit of uncertainty into the mix there. But I do think from a transactional standpoint, not saying prices, just on the transactional standpoint, 2025, I think will be much busier every year overall than we probably saw in 2024 and 2023 when 2023 interest rates continued to rise about 100 basis points more than anticipated, which really kind of built a brick wall there in the ability to finance. So I think 2025, regardless of what's going to happen, it will be a much better transactional year. And then if we can get some political certainty moving forward and probably have a new government step in maybe in springtime-ish, depending when we end up back at the polls, I think it could be a better year for transactions. So
yeah, I think so too. I think realistically, if Canada's got somebody with a business sense and ability to kind of speak on the things that maybe are negative, we have a fighting chance. So I think it's going in a good direction that way. But yeah, it's one of those things you never know.
With Trudeau out, I don't think it could get much worse. And I only say that from like an economic standpoint and kind of the damage that's been done, that I think the Liberals will be, regardless of who takes over the Liberal leadership role there, I think it'll be very hard for them to get back in just with the damage that he's done. In the eyes of Canadians, NDP doesn't have a terribly great track record on the federal level. I don't think the Liberals and NDP are going to form a new party. So I think that's another question. So I think it'd be very challenging to probably get the Conservatives not to form government in the future there, which Poilievre has come out and said, which I think was to be anticipated, they're going to roll back the capital gains taxes that were proposed in the most recent budget there. The CRA has come out and said that although the Trudeau has stepped down and his budget hasn't been seen through yet, that CRA is still going to plan to collect based on that inclusion rate. But it hasn't been passed into law. So, that's a whole other show waiting to happen. Santanna, before we let you go, you've been on the program before. You understand we have our 6-pack of lighthearted questions we could ask you just to kind of get a little bit better to know you outside the office. Do you have a few more minutes for us?
Yep.
The 6-pack is powered by our good friends over at Red Point Law.
Red Point Law, Corey, Tim, Falco, Scott, and the team. These are great people with a wealth of experience when it comes to commercial closings and private lending. And I just want to say, Corey, not to cut you off, they have a perfect 5-star review on Google.
So for all your commercial legal needs, visit them at redpointlaw.ca with offices in Vancouver and now open in downtown Kelowna.
All right. First question. What is one book you recommend our listeners read?
So it's a really simple book. And it was given to me by one of the executives of a multifamily group. And I think it's called What's Your Cheese or Where's the Cheese or something. That's a really good book. It's a really lighthearted book, but it basically, the premise of it is that you always have to change. So you can't just expect that you're always going to get the cheese. You always are going to be able to achieve what you need to achieve without changing. So that's a good one.
Good suggestion. It's 2025 here now. We're about middle of January. Do you have any 2025 New Year's resolutions?
I think my New Year's resolution is to find another cheese.
Well, I will tell you this. Over the holidays, I had this, and I'm going to mess this up. It was like a white truffle cheese. It was to absolutely die for. The problem is it comes in these like hockey puck style things, which I'm sure is just absolutely loaded with calories, is you can't stop eating it. So it's just
I want to be completely clear that I didn't mean literal cheese.
Oh no, I know you did. I'm taking this down a different avenue here. I was excited because all the holiday season, I ate so much of this cheese that I'm like, I'm going to take advantage of the situation. I'm going to share my truffle cheese story. It is so good. I'll have to find out the brand and share it with the listeners, but it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Sorry, I didn't mean to go on a different tangent. You can tell I haven't eaten today yet. All right, Melissa, next question up.
All right, next question. You found yourself on death row. What's your last meal?
Oh, wow.
Truffle cheese.
Yeah, right. Truffle cheese again. No, probably I would just keep it simple and just like poutine. That's a go-to.
A Canadian staple.
Exactly.
Now, could you imagine that poutine if you chopped up truffle cheese?
The truffle cheese,
and dropped that in instead of the cheese curds? It'd be amazing. It'd be amazing.
You know what? I'm actually a shredded cheese person. I'm not about the curds. So
do you have a preferred shredded cheese? I'll tell you, I'm gonna go throw this out there. You go to Costco, you get the Armstrong shredded cheese, the blended mix. It's the best shredded cheese ever.
Really?
It's amazing. It's amazing. Sorry, this is
pre-shredded. You don't shred it yourself.
This is cheese and commercials. Cheese and commercial real estate today. All right, Santanna, next question up. What's the best piece of business advice you feel you've received over your career?
I don't know. It's usually the stuff that I don't listen to until it's too late. I don't know. I think it's just, well, you and I had a chat, a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I think probably the best advice, and it's always something that you always know, but you actually have to do it. And that's just to make sure that you keep everything kind of structured and you have some habits, some good habits. And what I learned last year is you really got to make sure that you keep yourself moving. When I first came out to Parksville, before I got out here, I was always, going for runs or walks or hikes or something. And that really helps you kind of balance out all those crazy thoughts. There's so many things always jumping around. It is business advice, actually, but make sure that you take care of yourself first.
Well, I'm a big believer, too, that what you do outside of the office will have grave impact at the office, good or bad. And by that, I mean, if you're healthy and you have healthy habits and you're good with your time and you manage your time properly, that will relate to work in a very good way versus if you maybe have unhealthy habits and stuff like that. that can also get into the workplace and also probably not create the level of success an individual is looking for.
Yeah, I think it's important to, I don't think there is a balance. I'm not going to say balance because I know my life is not balanced at all. But if you can get a snippet of time to clear your head as much as you can, go for a walk, do whatever, that's helpful. And it's helpful to other people who have to deal with you.
Yep, a good point. Next question up.
All right, your favorite band or musician?
I don't know who my favorite is, but my dog is named after Wiz Khalifa, so that probably gives you an idea of my music sense. Don't get me to quote any of the music that I like because it's probably going to get bleeped out.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Okay, final question up. You've obviously been in commercial real estate for a long time now. Looking back at your career, what would you tell yourself? What piece of advice would you give yourself with what you know now from 10 years earlier?
The biggest thing is to just never stop calling, never stop going on meetings, never stop doing those things. Again, I think last year I got taken away by a lot of different other ventures. And you kind of lose track of the importance of meeting people and just talking to them and always getting different perspectives on what's going on. So I think the best thing to do is just to always keep those doors open and kind of have those conversations with the people you need to have conversations with, and success will come.
Awesome. So how can our listeners find more about what Santanna's doing, William Wright Central Island? If people want to, how can people find out more about all the amazing things you're working on?
Well, we're all over the place, aren't we? So on all social media, there's William Wright Commercial Central Island. That obviously triggers the stuff that's going on in Nanaimo, Parksville, and surrounding areas. We've got the websites. I've got my LinkedIn page that I share things with. Actually, I even share things with some of our other adventures, French Creek Pub and Cafe 356. Sometimes we throw the odd listing on there if it's applicable to the community. But yeah, all over the place, just Google. Amazing.
Well, thank you so much, Santanna, once again for breaking open the best market, or what we feel could be the best investment market in 2025, the Central Island and the Greater Nanaimo area.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Santanna. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Go have yourself some cheese.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
Bye.
There you have it, folks. Our interview today with Santanna Portman, William Wright Commercial, Central Island.
There it is.
Always great having Santanna on the program. And today we wanted to obviously unpack why we think Nanaimo is such a great opportunity. And she unpacks it. The biggest thing is demand now exists for this marketplace, whether it be owner-occupiers or even new tenants coming in, that wasn't there 5 or 6 years ago. That's the secret. And then because of that, demand's rising. The cost to rebuild these structures is so high you can't do it. It puts pressure on existing lease rates in existing spaces that just continues to drive the lease rates up, which adds value as an investor.
Nanaimo and her little sister, Parksville.
And Parksville.
That's right.
Parksville down the street. And I like Parksville. There's lots of development happening there. There's some very large transactions that took place in Parksville this past year.
Yeah.
That stuff that's been shopped around for a while has finally transacted, which is really, really good. So I think there's lots of opportunity in that Central Island area there for investors looking to get strong yield returns now, but also growth on that yield would be really, really good. Melissa, what's happening in the residential market? I know everyone's been kind of waiting for 2025. What does 2025 look like on the residential side? Interests are coming down.
Yeah, that's a
What's
really
gonna
good
happen?
question. I don't know if I have a good answer to that. I think right now it's a little bit slow and steady. Stuff's still happening, not crazy, but I think we're coming up to some really interesting times.
It's going to be interesting times. 2025. Transaction volume is going to go up. People, demand's never been higher because there's never been more people in need of housing as we have right now. Stress tests has obviously kept people, challenging to finance at these current interest rates. As rates come off, I think it's going to be a busy year. I'm not saying prices are going up. I'm not saying prices are going to go through the roof. But I think the transaction volume is going to increase. More houses are going to exchange hands. If interest rates come off dramatically, which I think, they'll I think they're going to come off again this year. We've got some great guests and some economists joining us here very, very soon that can probably unpack this better than I can. But I think you're going to find that unless the economy really bottoms and the BOC is really forced to drop rates much faster than expected, I think you'll see transaction volumes pick up. I don't necessarily think you'll see pricing dramatically pick up, at least not for the foreseeable future, unless we have a major BOC drop because of an economic issue, which could be tariffs.
There we go.
So most of those people who want to find out more about what's happening in the residential market may want to sell or buy with you. How can they find out that?
Yeah, you can call me 778-869-4477 or email me at melissa@vancouverrealestatepodcast.com.
And for all those looking to do commercial real estate, you can reach out to us at William Wright Commercial anytime through our website, williamwright.ca. Sign up for the latest and greatest news. You can send me an email anytime. I always love discussing real estate. Corey at williamwright.ca, or you can call our Vancouver office, 604-428-5255. Let us know what you're looking for, and we'll put you in touch with an agent that best services that area anywhere in the province.
Awesome.
All right, guys, we'll be back next week with another great episode. Thanks for listening.
Subscribe today.